Hi, Rich Sheffrin here, and it's about, what time is it? It's 12:10 in the morning in the Agora offices, and you might be wondering, why am I recording this video in the middle of the night when no one else is here? Well, about an hour ago, I got a phone call and they told me on the phone that the Castle videos, the ones you're watching right now, were missing the beginnings, and I was like, can't happen. I came down here, and I'm recording the beginnings, and then we'll just transfer over to the Castle videos themselves, but I wanted to make sure that you got every piece. So this first presentation is 11 easy ways to increase conversion rates without changing a word of copy. We're going to look at certain tactics that you can use on your VSL, certain tactics that you can use with retargeting, lots of strategies that you probably aren't using there, plus a bunch of other ways that you'll get into. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is VSLs. And so we have 5 different ways that you can increase the conversion rates of your VSLs. You can use a GIF as a VSL image. You can use resumable VSLs. You can use clickable VSL CTA, call to action images. You can use a VSL ticker teasers, and you can increase the speed. So, in the old days, the best practice was to set your VSLs to autoplay. Of course, over time, big tech got smarter and they stopped that, so that now autoplay is blocked for most browsers. But you want someone to start watching your VSL or they're never going to have the chance to buy from you. So how can you get your prospects to click on that VSL? Well, I saw Frank Kern do something really smart a while back, and here it is. It's a GIF that is actually a clickable image that will start the presentation, right? So when you land on the page, this is what it looks like. Much more likely to get clicked than if this alone was there. Now, this can easily be done with Wistia, so I'm sure it can be done with other services as well. I just know that it can be done on Wistia. Something definitely to use if you're not already using it. Now, also, in the past, when we used a webinar or a VSL, we never used the slider, right? We didn't want someone to be able to advance or rewind. We wanted to take back control of the sales message. So there was no slider. But what happens when your prospect doesn't watch the entire VSL? Now, this could be someone on your list that you sent to the VSL, or this could even be cold traffic, right? The normal thing that most VSLs, the way they're set up, is that if the person leaves and comes back, they then have to start watching from beginning again, which really sucks and most likely is not going to happen if they've watched any considerable time. Let's say you have a 60-minute long VSL. If they watched a half an hour, they're probably not going to want to watch the first half hour all over again. So what you want to use are resumable VSLs, where people can pick up where they left off. So here, right, this is if someone just watched and then came back to the site, right, they get the option of watching from the beginning or to start back up right where they left off. This increases conversion rates. It increases conversion rates, obviously, because you're saving someone a bunch of time. They were interested enough to come back, but maybe not interested enough to rewatch what they've already watched before. In the past, we would just send, if they came from our list, or if we had cookied them, they came to the page, we would just then have the page with a slider, right? But then they're still taking full control, and that's less than ideal. So with Wistia, you can follow up with them, and you can set up these parameters in Wistia so that if they looked at it on a mobile, right, it looks like you didn't get a chance to finish on your mobile. Here's a link back to the video where you can pick up where you last left off. Maybe when they get home, that email will be waiting for them if they were already on your list, right? And if they were on their desktop, looks like you got interrupted when watching this title. Click here to pick up where you left off. And for people that are not on your list, you can still cookie them and have that still be an option. Obviously, you could retarget and then have them come back and pick up where they left off as well. Use your imagination a little bit. Retargeting follow-up, right? All right, so what happens if a prospect watches your entire VSL, but they watch it on a mobile device like the Apple? And Apple might have changed this recently, so if it has, I apologize, but back when I created this presentation, there was no button to order when when the video is being played on screen, and when it's done playing, or at least when it used to be when it was done playing, it would just sit there. Now I think it might close, so this might be no longer relevant, but there are certainly some phones where it doesn't close and it leaves like this. And that's a problem, because now you're telling them to click the button to order, but where's the button, right? And remember, like when we're dealing in numbers, there are going to be people who are not smart enough to close the video, okay? So what you can do is you can have the video, the VSL, webinar, what have you, end, instead of just with a screen, end with a clickable image, right? And in that image, what it would be is your call to action. So this is an image, right, from Todd Brown, Smart Funnel Formula. And when you click on this image, it acts like a button and then takes you right to the order page. So this is also easily done with Wistia. I feel like I'm doing a commercial for Wistia, but Wistia does give you a lot of options that, left to your own, are very difficult to accomplish. Okay, video drop-off happens, right? If you've ever done a VSL or a webinar, what you often will see is that it kind of goes like this, that there's a high drop-off right in the beginning, and then it drops off slowly over time. So in this drop-off period, though, you might see certain spots where the drop-off is higher than expected, right? There seems to be more people dropping off at a specific point in time. Well, what you can do is that instead of redoing the whole video to try and address that spot, you can use what we call sliders, right, or teasers, where you take a fifth or a third of the slide, right, and you put some tease about what's coming up next. So in other words, let's say that there was a dip at the 5-minute mark. Maybe at 4:45, right, 4 minutes and 45 seconds, this flashes up on the screen. In the next 2 minutes, Rich reveals the one strategy that changed everything, right? And then the goal is to get them past that 5-minute mark, right? So that what often happens is if you can get someone from not moving off track, they will then stay on track, right? So this is a really useful way. We use this in webinars, we've used it in VSLs, where we didn't feel like changing the video, and so we just put sliders in, and once again, we did this in Wistia, where you just throw these sliders in, and we've been able to fix quite a few of the drop-off problems that we experienced by using this strategy, right? So it's just bottom third teasers. I don't know if that's really a third, that might be more like a fifth, but you get the point. Creating teases of what's coming next. Okay. Next is increasing the speed by 5 to 10%. Now, of course, this all depends on how quickly you talk and what your audience is, but what I found for the VSLs, at least that I've done, and the webinars that I've done, that about a 5 to 7% for me just makes it more engaging. I tend to kind of talk slow. Maybe not tonight because I don't want to be in the office all night, but generally by speeding it up between 5 and 7% for when I do presentations, it holds people's attention longer, it's more engaging, and conversion rates go up, so we're not arguing with it. All right, make your VSL sticky using floating video on page scroll. This is also I think this is Kern, not sure, don't remember, but anyway, this is the VSL, this is the sales letter, and as you're scrolling down the sales letter, the VSL moves with you. We call that a floating video, right? It's floating down the page as the person scrolls. So if you want to do that, you can go here to Code Canyon item sticky video for WordPress 17444-284, codecanyon.net. item sticky video for WordPress, right? And if you have a coder, you can go here, and so that wraps up what was missing from video 1 from the castle. Rich, take it over from here. Okay, so retargeting. How many people's retargeted now? Okay, a few. Do you do a lot of retargeting? So, yeah, I ended up, as I was creating these slides, I probably spent more time on retargeting in this presentation than I originally thought I was going to do, spend time on. But as I've familiarized myself with the way most of our franchises use retargeting, they do it wrong, and they do it ineffectively. And retargeting should be one of the highest ROI advertising that you do. And if you have spent the time and the money to get someone to your site, and they've spent some time on your site, to lose that person is significant. In fact, it would be a good idea from this point forward to really think of a retargeting list as almost like another email list, because that's kind of where things are moving anyway. It becomes a whole other list that you can advertise to, and should be. So we're going to talk about a lot of different ways to do that. So the first thing, though, is delete pixel, which will immediately make your ROI on your retargeting significantly higher as far as ROI. So this one thing here, I don't know what you guys paid to be here, but this should pay for it if you do any kind of retargeting. As you probably looked at your website and you look at traffic, you'll see some percentage bounce pretty quickly. You know, they come and go. They're not really interested. Well, if you delay the drop of the pixel by 30 to 45 seconds, and it's a good idea to test with 45 seconds and then test away from there, maybe a little bit less. What you're doing is that you're then only retargeting people who are actually interested. They've spent some amount of time, a half a minute or what have you, on your page. So I put in here just the code if you were using Facebook retargeting on your page and you wanted to wait 45 seconds. So you can find this code anywhere. It's just I think it's Java. I'm not sure. I'm not really a programmer. But this will make a huge difference in the ROI of your retargeting. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm lost.
Okay, so you know what retargeting is?
Yeah, but I don't understand.
So generally, when a pixel is put down, right?
What do you mean?
A pixel?
Yeah, and I know what pixel is,
Right.
but not.
Well, a pixel is going to drop a cookie, right?
Yeah.
And that cookie, for most, if you take your retargeting pixel like this, and you put it on your page, then it will drop the cookie in second number 1 that the person comes to your site. So if they come to your site and then say, "Oh, this was a mistaken back button," you're going to be retargeting them, and you shouldn't be retargeting them because they really are not people who expressed an interest. You could, but they will convert at a much less rate. Does that make sense? So if you drop the pixel 45 seconds after they've gotten on the page, right? Then the only people that are on that list are people who actually spent some time on your page.
Right. So they are the potential clients.
Right.
Okay, got you.
Okay. So that's just a tactic that makes a big difference. Okay, but the bigger thing is that at least when I've asked franchisees about retargeting, what they do. Generally, it's if someone comes to one of our front-end offers, we retarget them the same front-end offer with kind of the same even call to actions and the same ads. And if they go to a back-end, we kind of do the same thing. So we're advertising the same thing. So that really doesn't make a lot of sense from my perspective. The whole idea of retargeting is that it's another way to be able to move people to the next step, whatever that next step is, in your customer journey for your funnel, and to leverage then where they are to where you want to take them. Okay, so if, for example, if they've watched a VSL but they haven't bought, sending them back there, even with picking up where they left off, maybe they watched the whole thing, isn't really going to get the job done. So you have to do something else.
I'll explain more in a second as we kind of dive a little bit deeper. But the point is that if you start, you should have lots, just like you have lots of segmented lists, you should have lots of segmented retargeting lists. Okay? So, for example, if they've been to your site but they haven't opted in or they haven't bought, then you can use retargeting for a lead gen offer to try and get their email address, or you can send them your best performing front end offer. If they've opted in but they haven't bought, then obviously you already have their email address, so the only thing you probably want is to send a front end offer, right? I'll explain different ways of doing that and more advanced ways of doing that. Let's say they got to the order page but they didn't buy. Well, fear of regret of not making the purchase. I'll give you some examples of that. Potentially a better offer, maybe adding an unadvertised bonus that was already there that wasn't listed, or making it deadline driven. And deadlines, if you've never played around with deadlines, it's shocking. It's shocking how multiplies conversions at times. If they're a front end buyer, I don't know any franchises that do this, but it would seem to make sense that as soon as they bought, the likelihood of them still being in that buying heat is highest. They should immediately start being targeted for your best performing back-end offer of that franchise. Why not? Why wait until you get emails out or anything else? So I wanted to kind of walk you through a few examples. So let's say this is your VSL and they bailed before they even got to the offer. They bailed too early, right? Obviously, you would want to send them back possibly not possibly, you'd want to send them back where they can pick up where they left off. But these are three different ways that you might want to approach it. So the first is that you didn't finish at curiosity hook. So is there something that they missed that you revealed right before the offer that's incredible? And if not, that might be something that you start adding so that you have something, some big hook that you can advertise that they missed that they'll be able to watch when they pick up where they left off, right? So some kind of curiosity, self-interest kind of hook that relates to some of the content that was missed, and ideally, if there's a reveal before the offer, they missed that reveal, and that would be the go-to, okay? So that would be a curiosity hook. Fear of regret is a really cool one. I've never seen anyone talk about this, and I learned it from a client of mine. My client he taught accountants in the United States how to pass the CPA exam. It's like how to be a chartered accountant or someone who can analyze and certify books for the public sector. So when people came to his site, so he sold study guides, test prep, etc. for the CPA exam. When people didn't buy, he followed them around with questions from the CPA, the hardest questions from the CPA exam, right? So, I can't even make one off the top of my head, but some difficult accounting question from the CPA exam that says, can you answer? You would if you, studied the course, blah, 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 right? And that followed, 20, 30 questions and followed that person around, and it got a very high conversion rate. If you think about it, there are purchases that you've considered that you've also considered regretting not making that purchase. And so here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to increase the fear that they were going to regret not making that purchase. So during the crypto craze, right, like anyone who would have came to a front end or a back end offer on crypto, while crypto was going up, it wouldn't be bad. Had you bought when you came to this page, you would already be up X number of dollars or whatnot, right? That would follow them along each day, right? Very powerful. So yeah, how can you leverage regret that they might potentially regret not making the purchase? So my very first business was in the clothing business, and then the record business. And when I got out of the record business and the clothing business, I went into the hypnosis business. And it has to do with fear of regret. I went into the hypnosis business, and I've now completely forgotten why I was telling you that. I'll remember it.
We're trying something like this at the end of this month. We have a guru who teaches people how to freelance online using Upwork. So like every minute, X amount of jobs go online.
Sure.
People can take advantage of. So we have a webinar with him, and it does pretty well. But our problem is when they drop off, we can't really get them back on it.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to send them a video of him, kind of forcing them, being like, "Why haven't you bought? Right now, it's been since you've watched X amount of this webinar, there's been X amount of jobs put up that you haven't been able to take advantage of." So kind of putting that in front of them.
Yeah, that should work well. And I have some other things that you can do as it relates to webinars that we'll get to. I do remember now why I brought up the hypnosis. So that's where I learned direct response. And we did full page ads in the New York papers every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then half page on Saturday. And we had one newspaper that worked extremely well for us, was the Daily News in New York. And but because we were advertising in it every day, ads would get tired over time. And what we would do and it would give a complete new life to a high performing ad, was we would take the full page, reduce it down to 3/4, and then we'd have, so you'd still have that full page, but now it's 3/4, and then we'd bracket it, and it would say like something along the lines, you may have seen this ad before, but these people responded. And it was testimonials of people, right? Like, and the idea being, like, you've seen this ad, these people responded, they're now not smoking, thinner, everything's wonderful, you're still looking at the ad, right? So same kind of thing here. It's, can you create regret, or the possibility that they might regret that purchase? And then deadline driven. Deadlines, like, we'll get to some slides later, but I've always been shocked at how much sales go up on deadlines. If we do, I have a graph that I'll show you later that each day as we're getting closer to the deadline, the last 3 days, like we're doubling all the sales from all the days before, if you're really hitting the deadline hard. And the last time I did something like that, I was so surprised by the amount of people that bought, that they bought a coaching program that I had. I mentioned that during a Q&A call. Like, I was really surprised, sharing the results. And quite a few people actually raised their hands and told me that the reason they bought was the deadline. They weren't sure they were going to be able to get it again, and blah, blah, blah. So I was shocked, and then I got the reason. But the more that you can leverage deadlines, the better. And I'm going to show you ways to do that throughout your funnels, and to make them dynamic, so that there's a deadline for every single person that is dynamic to them. And everything on your site and all your emails will be telling them about their deadline, right? Not the deadline, because everyone has their own deadline.
Have you tested combining all three?
I would imagine that, well, I kind of thought about it in this sequence, like if I was going to test, like, it seems as if, I don't know, when I was laying it out, it made the most sense. We will be doing a lot of this testing, now that, at least in my area in Agora, but we haven't done that much. This is put together from the clients that I've had over the years that have been extremely effective at remarketing. And in addition, when we invented the automated webinar, the whole reason we invented the automated webinar was that we had so much more control over what interaction we would have with each type of prospect based on how much of the content they consumed. So, I got to the top of the market on reports, but I didn't know if someone read it or not, and I therefore couldn't target exactly what they needed to know to move them forward. But with remarketing and retargeting, that's no longer an issue. You can do it anywhere and everywhere. And you don't need to get them on a list. You can get them on a list later if you want, but this is a really great way to increase conversions, because you're using the highest leverageable advertising online. And this is especially powerful, I would think, combined with email, doing both to back-end buyers, as opposed to just more of the same. So that's that. Okay. And so then we would, in all these cases, we would take them back to the VSL, picking up where they left off, right? So that would be where we would move them. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, let's say they completed the VSL, right? So now we don't have to move them back to the VSL, obviously. Now they also know the offer, right? You could, it would be harder to make a better offer when they don't know the first offer. So that's why it wasn't on the previous slide. They hadn't watched the whole VSL. Here they have watched the whole VSL. So first one's here, regret, same concept, right? Just what can we do to make them regret the sale, right? What can we do to get them to regret passing up on the purchase? But the next one is a better offer. They've already watched the whole thing and they haven't bought. So unless something is changing, whether it's a deadline or a better offer or something, or getting them to really be fearful that they'll regret the purchase, just moving them back to the order page in and of itself is not generally going to be enough. They left, right? So, so a better offer though can be, most newsletters have lots of premiums from prior promotions. You could, when they join, they're going to get all those. They weren't focused on it. You could sweeten the deal and then give a deadline on that deal, right? So you could have a deadline on the whole offer or a deadline just on that better offer for some period of time.
When I started in the business 2.5 years ago, I was always being told your first offer is your best offer. So never improve your offer or lower your offer throughout.
I agree with the second part. I would never lower the offer because that trains people to price shop. Here we're talking about you're really not adding anything. Like these are all resources that exist in the platform that you're now just pulling out to try and let them know, that these are bonuses that were unadvertised. So you're not necessarily, if you want to make it so it's clear that you're not just making a better offer because they didn't buy, but actually these were all going to be there. But since you're not buying, we figured we'd tell you because we don't want you to pass up on these unadvertised bonuses.
Something we tried too was changing the terms of the offer. So it's like a $37 one-year newsletter. And it's like a last-ditch effort. We changed the terms to $19 for 6 months. So you still make the same amount of money, assuming they renew it 6 months. When you change the terms, but with that barrier.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
When we say that we want you to start with your strongest offer,
right?
Let's say that you've got a new product release, you want to get that 1-2 year back
Sure.
end sale first. Then you can go back out and say, we'll make the payment terms easier for you, so you can do 4 payments instead of 1.
Yeah. I definitely would not make the better offer a discount, like just a straight out discount, because that's just really bad long term. Yeah, figuring out how you can, what we used to do in the internet marketing space back in the days of, how many people are familiar with product launches? So most people are. The way they're done now is 4 videos generally. That's the way it's done in the internet marketing space. But in the old days, it wasn't done like that. The 4 videos process was created for Jeff, the creator of it, to find an easy way to teach it. But in the old days, it was much more dynamic. The audience didn't know what was going to happen next because you didn't know what was going to happen next. It was more of an interaction. But because that was harder to teach, it was ultimately changed. And it's the same here. You definitely don't want to be seen coming, by being obvious, right? I mean, that's basically the bottom line there. In all of these examples, though, you wouldn't take them back to the VSL. You take them to the order page, right? Because they've already watched the entire VSL. So there's really no reason to send them back. If you were going to send them back, then you would send them with the slider so they could review any part of the offer or the promotion, or you could have you could have the video playing, again, not autoplay, but they could play it with a slider, and then underneath could be Q&A, right? Because a lot of times you can address a lot of objections in Q&A, and then you would have that video, you could have the video actually follow them in the Q&A.
How's that going for that?
For the webinar? Yeah, for webinars, very powerful to have a page of Q&A covering a lot of the objections, for sure. Does this make sense? All right. Okay, on-site behavioral targeting. So just like we're using retargeting off-site, you can retarget on your own site. It's not really retargeting because you're not paying anyone and you're not necessarily using a network, but you can do a lot of things on your own site that can actually move the needle. So you can make targeted front-end offers to prospects related to the content that they're currently reading, right? Like if there's offers that are related to, gold going up, the market going down, whatever it is, you can have those offers show up on pages that relate to that. And I don't know what you guys are doing with content, but like at Agora Financial, every piece of content is tagged, based on the emotion, fear, greed, etc., and then also the economic outlook and a few other variables. So we can tell pretty easily what actually should, by tag, what offer would most likely go with this type of editorial, and that's powerful. What makes these powerful is, one, the targeting, but two, the immediacy. If someone's reading an article about something right now, the likelihood that they are interested enough to potentially watch a promotion about that same thing right now is much higher. Make targeted back-end offers to customers related to the content they're consuming. So same thing, right? Front-end or back-end. But depending on how much traffic you get to your site, this can make a big difference. Target lead magnets to people who are not customers and they're not adopted yet, to people who are already interested in a particular content. How many of you do have a site that gets a good amount of traffic? Okay. How many of you are familiar with content upgrades? Upgrades? Content upgrades? Okay, so it's a traffic technique, it's not here. So what a content upgrade is if you go and you use analytics for your website, right? The pages, and let's say that you use a blog, and that were the biggest traffic movers of stuff that would sell to 6 out of 10 people on the street, those generic type offers. And what they did was, I was always fascinated because they approached it totally differently. So I just share it with you because it might be valuable for some. They did it the opposite of, I would think, the way most of you do it. So what they would do, what I believe Agora does is, we create a promo. We have this promo, it went through legal, it's now VSL, webpage, whatever it is, and now we're going to go out and market it. And so we're going to do display advertising on Facebook and Google, etc. Right? The challenge with that is that the top of the funnel really starts with clicks, and now you're trying to match the theme of the promo with the ad, right? What they do is the other way. So they come up with lots of different themes. They create banners or display ads first. All of them go to just a generic landing page, and then the winners of the banner clicks, that determines the theme, because that's what's going to get them the most clicks when they roll out. So it's just a very different approach. They actually use banners to determine, a much bigger universe, a much bigger way to scientifically test. It's either yes or no, and easy to kind of have the crowd guide you. If you advertise this, you're going to get the most clicks. Now that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the most conversions, but And in these days, even back then it was even more important because you paid per impression. You know, most people aren't paying by impression today that much at least. So it's a little bit different, but powerful strategy. One to think about kind of along those lines.
Well, what I like about the meeting is that often what happens when you have 2 or 3 ideas is you end up testing 2 or 3 different leads, right? And I'm talking about the idea approach to the right. But then what we typically do is you just pick the one that won and you forget about the rest of them. But often the one that won wins marginally.
Right.
Which means the others are. I think
they could be reused. And they
right.
could be.
I think of them as gates. Like there's different sized gates, different sized doors to get into the house, and some people like large blue ones, and some people like red ones, and you want everybody to get in. So I do like the idea of just since you've already at least done that, why not just take those other versions, and that would be the easiest way to test it. Take those other versions and send them immediately to everybody that just is. I would send them like 4 seconds later.
Yeah.
There's a different
lead.
Don't explain it. Same package. And I'll bet you do pretty well with that.
Yeah, Clayton used to do a lot of that at Weiss. They would just rewrite the lead, because Clayton was the only one, writing all the copy, he couldn't write new ones all the time, so he would just relead it.
That's when he got those high numbers on how many things he sold.
Yeah. But there's a balance, and I don't know, maybe you could talk to this, because at least from my experience with Agora, it seems and it's also what I've learned from you guys, that Agora is a hit factory. And in order to have a hit factory, you got to take a lot of swings. And in order to take a lot of swings, it's really a promotion creation factory. And that anything that slows down a promotion from getting out there slows down the factory, so to speak. So, we've played around at Agora Financial. We haven't done anything specifically of creating a certain team, when anything shows promise, one marketer, one developer, one copywriter and designer, so all together, make something good great, right? Not anything shitty is just shitty, and no point in spending time. But anything good, it's like the end of America didn't have an upsell path behind it, and if it had an upsell path behind it, it probably could have lasted another year. So there's a balance between not slowing down the machine and getting the next promotion out versus.
Agora is a hit factory for sure, and the culture has to be that way because everything you do in marketing is incremental. Even sometimes you can get a 200% response, whereas package changes everything. But these packages don't come along that well. And to me, as a marketer, the person that loves marketing too, I think the secret is, and from a publisher's point of view, to make the marketing enhancements automatic if you possibly can, so they're not interfering. And you certainly don't want to give your copywriters the impression that they can, market their way into success by funnels or any of these.
At least in the divisions I've seen, there's not a lot of communication between the media buyers and the copywriters, where there really can be a lot, because the media buyers, if they're doing a good job, how many of you are familiar with AdBeat? So AdBeat tracks every display ad and shows you whether it's working or not, and where they're running it, where it's working, where it's running, etc. So that's really great information for a copywriter, but the two don't seem to communicate frequently. AdBeat. Yeah. ADBEAT.com. A really good competitive intelligence. So I hope that of some of these, at least you've determined 1, 2, or 3 that you want to put into action. If you did, then this was a good session. At least I think it is if you walked away with something that you're going to do. If you haven't thought of something that you want to do, you don't think it fits, then maybe when we get a chance to talk individually, I can help you figure out where you might be able to apply some of these. And like I said before, these are not separate than what we're going to cover next, as far as increasing the cart value or increasing email. Ideally, all these things should be working together. And when you do, you multiply the results. Do you have a question? Or just yawn? Yeah, it's I don't know. Well, it's probably not. It probably never came here because you guys are thin and we're fat. But in the United States, there's tons of weight loss products, right, over the counter. But like, I guess about, I don't know, 8 years ago, there were a couple companies that were doing extremely well packaging their weight loss products to look like prescription products. Right. They were just over the counter, but they look like a prescription.
Naming them though,
yeah.
they were giving the names.
Yeah, and they sold really, really well, and that's just a difference in packaging and naming. So we don't have the same benefit, I think, in financial and you know, money, internet stuff, but you know, there's this packaging element with supplements that seems to be important.
And just the process of testing is very good too, because it gets you to think about what you're doing, you know, seriously. Right. The one example I remember particularly was there was a potency supplement, and we were talking about different names, and you know, we were looking for names. Some of the names were very kind of macho, bull, and those kind of names. And then we had, you know, we were talking about, I had the thought that, you know, with this potency with men, it's like size, right? That's the fundamental psychological issue that we're talking about. So we decided to invent the biggest, we changed the product. This is the biggest pill ever made. That's it. We just made it bigger. It's so big, you may not be able to swallow it. Maybe break it up, and it was like a 300% increase over the other one. So it's just that and it doesn't. When you think of it, how much money do drug manufacturers spend testing their images and their names, and we don't do it at all? Kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't matter.
So yeah, so it's like I said, he swears by it, and his results show that he should. The other thing he does is for longer page sales letters, he splits it up into 7 segments, and then he'll, you know, continue the next page, but he A/B splits each page to see which segments cut and paste together the best. So he takes the sales letter and he creates a different version of each section that still makes sense in the flow and everything to see which one gets more people to the bottom of the page to click forward.
Well, I think this should be done in financial too. You think about the Tim Ferriss story, you know, about how he had his great success by testing titles. They're not just titles. We come up with the idea of the 4-hour work week. That's not a title. It's a big idea.
It's a huge idea.
But it was done through testing. So if you're selling a financial newsletter, you have your big idea. But whether you call it the end of America or you call it Armageddon, it's going to make a big difference. And so why we don't do that kind of testing, I don't know. You know, it's crazy. We could do it on Facebook, and you can see what the responses are. And it does make such a difference, especially if you're going to have a premium-led promotion. You're not going to change the name of your newsletter, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the title of the thing that's in front of you.
And if you just to take that route, if you go that route, like at least with what Ferriss did, which was really genius, and I don't think most people really appreciate, is that before him, everyone was really selling more money, like make more money, have more money. He was the first person that really got that people didn't really want more money, they wanted a better life, and that they were actually willing to make less if they could have a lifestyle that they really wanted. Forget about the fact that it's bullshit.
You know that I discovered in my personal library a book that was published I think in the 60s called The 4-Hour Workday.
Yeah, you had 2 copies. You gave me a copy. And because I wanted to create a program
called.
called.
Perfect example, like that's actually believable, right? But that I'm sure would have tested very low.
Yeah. But yeah, so the naming is critical. Probably even more so in supplements, but certainly also in any product.
We use this a lot to test.
You do.
Like you get with international living, but we find we just started an Australian version of international living, so we don't know the Australian market very well. And when we're talking about Southeast Asian countries, the USP for each one, what they feel is totally different to what we thought they felt. So we tested headline ideas based on the USP, say Thailand or Bali or Malaysia, and it was actually very interesting that we were gone down the completely wrong route with headline ideas for the country.
So is there any big takeaways about Australians that you can derive from that?
They're very, very different. They want to be very direct. They don't want to be marketed at. I think they want you just to tell them we're actually just selling this product. So we find we like to build a romantic story. We're talking to the country with the American line, we're talking to Europe, we're telling them how beautiful it is and how romantic it is. The Australians just want the nuts and bolts of how to get there.
And it performs better that way?
Yeah.
Because generally people say that they want that, but then they don't necessarily respond. Sounds interesting. All right. So this was actually more than 11, but this wraps this first session. So we have about 10 minutes or 12 minutes. If there are any questions about any of these or any other issues related to conversion that you'd like to ask me or talk about, if not, I guess we'll just take a little bit longer of a break.
I thought it was worth, put that idea that you talked about the cure of graduates. I like the example you gave because you can do a lot more with that than we're doing. Typically, when people do the most obvious things, you might have missed out, stock went up, and I don't feel good about those, and I suspect they don't work very well because the problem with the secondary emotions, well, many emotions, is that you don't want to name them exactly. Because people don't want to think of themselves as being driven by these type of emotions. Especially feelings like jealousy or guilt or all these other emotions, and regretting a purchase is something that people don't want to do. So you have to do it very indirectly, and I think the example you gave is very clever of just giving somebody a question, and they can't get the question, and they're completely out of, they're not being insulted by the thing, you made a mistake. And so I just think that if we spend some time, I wish we could come up with an example, but I'm sure there are lots of clever ways that we can do that in financial and health purchases. But the ways that are going to work, I'm pretty sure, are indirect ways.
Yeah.
Indirect ways, where you don't just do the obvious thing. You think there's some way of making them fear that they might regret it without actually saying it.
I have actually, I've left one out, I think it was here, but I just didn't read it. Hold on. Just go to
Would that work for health as well?
I have to believe it would, but you can't go the obvious route. Like, you're not going to say, you're one step closer to having a heart attack.
Another night of not satisfying your wife. How many more until she leaves you?
And there are different ways of doing it. I mean, the scarcity thing, in a way, it could be done too.
A deadline could.
You miss out on an opportunity.
The another way that we've done, not so much with retargeting, but Ryan Levesque has been from the Ask method, if you know what that is. He's been using this a lot. He's seen quite a nice increase. What we used to do is, whenever I wrote one of these reports, I was launching some kind of coaching program behind it that hadn't existed yet. And the report was about changing people's beliefs so that they want this product. And generally, when we did it, I would charge more because it was live with me. Even if it wasn't private at that point, it was a group, but they were talking to me live. The Q&As were live, etc. And during the time it was live, we would offer at the end of every week. You would do it differently, obviously, but we had competitions for the best case studies, like who used the information the most, got the best results so far. And each week we awarded a winner, and the winner got to come down to our office. We flew them down. The whole team worked on their business for the day, and they got time with me. And so, over 8 weeks, we could get several hundred video. Like the way they applied was like they sent in a video case study of what they studied, what their business was like. Then they used this, and now their business is like this. And we would use a lot of those when we went to go relaunch the product, because we relaunched it automated without me, we dropped the price. Now it's cheaper than what other people paid, and we had all these case studies that we could use very effectively. And so, you can, if you launch a product, you could always have some kind of contest up front, like the first 2 weeks, like of who gets the best results with the product, and have a contest, and then use those submissions in the retargeting. Because once again, like, we have to advance the sale. They watch the whole thing and they haven't bought. Like, there's got to get, either they don't believe you, it wasn't a good enough offer. There's something, right? To just send them back the same offer seems not such a great idea. So he uses a lot of video retargeting of the video testimonials of one person after another saying what a great investment was. Yeah, Bill?
What I was thinking was that when you're writing these things, whatever it is, you often have a big theme. And in this big theme, there are several pieces to it. And as a copywriter, you don't know which one. You can't go with all of them, so you got to choose. And when I'm writing, I'm always afraid that I've chosen the wrong one. And so I like the idea of retargeting on the theme initially.
Yeah, you can change the theme.
And maybe I got the wrong one, so I want to say, wait a minute, I was going to tell you about that.
So it's a little bit different than that, but I've had some clients of mine